Welcome to Sex, Dating, and Hookups. And it'll be moderated by Si Ying. So we have some housekeepings to do for recording. We will be recording this session for those who can't make it or for you to rewatch this later. Recordings will be available for up to 30 days for when it's been put up. We are pinning the video so that only the presenters will be recorded. This means you can choose to keep your video and audio on or off. So if you speak, the recording will only pick up your audio and not your name. You can type your questions in the chat box if you prefer, and depending on the presenters, you could private message them as well. Please keep your audio on mute whenever you are not speaking. Otherwise, we might pick up your background noise. We encourage you to check our Sugar and Spice Facebook group for latest updates and announcements. As for consent, please do not contact our participants outside of the festival without their consent. You can always ask them for permission through the festival or Facebook group before messaging them. We do not want instances of participants feeling violated or unsafe. So for emotional support, please email us at emotionalsupport@sugarandspice.asia. So I'll give the floor to Si. Please take it away. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Fiona. So it's a good day, everyone. Welcome to this panel. So I'll be moderating this discussion with my fellow speakers. So Janice, Leong, Jasmine King, Samuel Chow, and Marissa Trew. So I think a little bit about myself. I'm a part-time social work student who is working in the events management business full-time. So I think this topic primarily interests me because of my own self-discovery experience around sex and intimacy, and also insights that I can take away from my fellow panelists. So I think in this discussion, we'll be addressing navigating intimacy and personal boundaries in relationships, amid myths around dating and the hookup culture, and as well as what this means for the future of love and moving forward for our parents and audience. So I think without further ado, so please allow me to maybe have the panelists introduce themselves in terms of what they do, their relationship status, and how this topic relates to them or intrigues them. So perhaps Janice could start first.
Okay, hi, I'm Janice. So I'm a freelance writer on janiquil.com. And I write about travel and beauty, and occasionally I talk about sex toys too. And as for my relationship status, I am in a polyamorous relationship with 4 partners. And so as for hookup culture, I am so for it. And I think not everybody should have like a certain phase in their life to go through that at least once. Yeah, and I pass it down to Marissa.
Okay, hi guys, I'm Marissa Trew. I host a podcast based out of Singapore called Just So We're Clear, which is typically focused on like women's lifestyle issues, a lot of sexual positivity. I'm mixed background, I'm half British, half Singaporean, so navigating like the divide between casual relationships and more traditional Asian culture is something that I am very well aware of because it's something I encounter every day. I'll pass it on to Samuel.
Yeah, hi, Samuel here. So I juggle a few things like working in crypto as well as trying to ideate my own startup. So personal life, I'm mostly single for now. I mean, I do have, I do see some girls on a somewhat regular basis, but I wouldn't count on that. So I think it's mostly single, yeah.
And then Jasmine.
Hey everyone, my name is Jasmine King. I am a talent manager by day, and on the side, I run as a passion, I run a sex positive page on Instagram as well as Facebook, where I talk primarily on sex, intimacy, pleasure especially, and I'm from Malaysia. And why this topic is interesting for me is because, first of all, I'm plus size. And so from a young age, I felt really insecure with being plus size. And I thought that nobody would like me because society deemed that, plus size women are not attractive. But then after being in a long-term relationship and then experience each other sexually, I then become very curious. And for 2 years after that 4-year relationship, I just went crazy on the dating apps. And so it really changed my perspective of like what hookup culture is about, how society view plus size women and everything like that. And it just brought me to a more sort of self-love, I guess, and sort of understanding and navigating myself through life. So that's why this topic is interesting.
All right, thank you all. So I think maybe we could start by sort of addressing some of the stereotypes around casual dating and maybe less conventional relationships. So maybe in terms of the myths that you guys have heard about casual sex and the hookup culture and things like that. Yeah. So maybe like some of the stereotypes I've heard is that it dehumanizes relationships, or it prevents people from sort of forming long-term relationships. So maybe we could start with Janice in terms of the stereotypes or the myths that you've heard from your own.
Like you mentioned about dehumanizing. I feel like the myth when relationship starts off casual is a bit difficult to develop into a long-term or a real relationship. But then again, what is a real relationship? So it really depends on how you define between you and the person you're seeing, whether it's casual or not. So it's not impossible because 2 of my current partners all started out as casual, like 1 night stand, 2 nights, and then become, I can't wait to see you next month, to, oh, let's rendezvous in this country. So it became, and 3 years passed. So it's possible that such casual relationship can develop into something more, as long as you're on the same page. That's what I feel. So that is one of the myths I feel. So we pass it down to Marissa. I think it go that way.
I actually remember in school, they were talking about how the girls in particular should practice more restraint because the guys were just going to be horny and it was up to us to stop them. And I actually distinctly remember one metaphor they used was that a woman who has sex with multiple men was like a piece of chewing gum, in that she loses flavor, she loses her value as she gets passed down the line, which was awful because that's just not true. And then the other one that you encountered, like, is that if you dated casually, if you slept with someone too fast, that would kind of flip a switch in their head and they wouldn't be interested in seeing you again. And there was no, like we said just now, like there was no possibility of it escalating into a proper relationship after that. Those are the main myths I definitely remember. Those are the ones that stuck with me the most. I'll pass it on to Jasmine.
For me, the main one, so like this, there were 2. I never thought hookup culture is something that happens in Asian society. I always thought that, I watch a lot of TV and I always thought that it only happens like in the Western countries. So I never thought of it as being like a huge thing here. And then when I got into like this whole like casual dating, hookup culture, I was just like, wow, like everyone does it. And that is something very, very normal and something very natural. And it doesn't only happen in Western countries, it happens in Asia as well, Malaysia especially. So that really like surprised me. And the fact that we've always been told, I myself have always been told, like, don't give yourself so easily to men because, later you will be like, as women, we're like so weak and fragile and we'll fall in love with them and our feelings will get hurt and everything like that. And men are like very strong, and then, they can just use and, abuse and just go away. And then I realized that I was actually able to, when I was having my 2 year of, hookup culture in casual dating, I was able to compartmentalize my emotions. I don't get hurt easily and I'm okay to just see someone and be with them that time. And then I just like would not have any, I don't feel any, like, I miss them or whatever like that. It doesn't happen to me. So I was just like, wow, I'm able to I'm able to be like a guy and not have all this attachment. So that was very interesting for me. And that some of the guys that I met, they in turn have attachment instead. So I was just like, everything that I thought about men and women just completely changed when I was sort of dating around. Sam?
Yeah, hi. So I think it's going to be a bit of a contrarian on this. So of course, I think this panel is very important for let's say speaking of our personal experience. So I will speak about that, but at the same time, I believe that ultimately everything is all supply and demand. It's all human economics in a certain way. Same thing. I think the same rules in the dating scene apply to like let's say HR hiring and everything else. So there's always like the think of society in terms of bell curves. There's always going to be the mass of people in the center, and then there's always going to be extremities. For example, there's people who really want to fuck around, and there's some people who really are totally against that. So, of course, the center will always be the defining characteristics of any society. So, I think that as an individual, if you want to enjoy something, you got to enjoy responsibility. So, it's not in a sense where you should conform to society, but the thing is that you should have a deep understanding of who you are, what you want, and how you can manage it. So, I'll treat, let's say, hookup culture the same way as I would treat alcohol, cigarettes, or maybe even recreational drugs. You really should have a deep understanding of yourself before you try to do something else. Yeah.
Can I just like add a comment to that? I just wanted to bounce a question off you in terms of, I don't know how deep we understand it before everyone gets involved. I feel like it's one of those things that just like, you know, your first kiss or the first time you sleep with someone, you kind of figure it out as you go. So how do you learn about it and find that understanding before you start?
Okay, so I think it's a very tricky question. It's just like, for example, if you ask someone what is enlightenment, you receive 10,000 different answers from 10,000 different people, right? For example, if you ask this particular sect of Buddhists what is enlightenment, they'll give you one answer. You ask the Christian what is enlightenment, you ask the Muslim what is enlightenment, they all have different answers. So all I can say is that it's a very, as much as it's a very individualistic approach. We must have at least the ability to self-reflect. So of course, some of us will experiment, some of us will make mistakes along the way, but it's up to us to correct them. So everything is all about self-discovery. I believe that to self-fulfillment is a process of both experimentation, reflection, and self-discovery. So it has to be like a self-reinforcing loop. So we must manage ourselves in a certain way. Yeah. I think, sorry if I don't have any hard and fast answers for that.
All right, thanks. I think just now Janice did mention that the definition, so relationships is sort of defined, might be defined by two people. So my next question to you guys would be, how do you think we define romantic love and even commitment as a very broad term differently from other generations or probably other cultures as well? So maybe Jasmine could start first.
How do we define sort of relationship and commitment as opposed to other generations, right?
Yes.
I mean, I definitely can't speak for everybody, but I feel like I feel like today commitment, we're more focused towards careers. I feel that the relationship as you know, marriage, especially, not just relationship, actually marriage is kind of like a back burner sort of thing. That career is important, yes, being in a relationship is important, but with the relationship there's more commitment and you can't focus on work. So like that's where the casual dating sort of part really picked up in, you know, like nowadays, especially like with online dating, with Tinder and all of that, it just makes it so much easier, I guess, to do casual dating. And like this whole idea of like being in a serious relationship is kind of like everyone would see it as like a traditional mindset sort of thing. Like if you want to get married and you're like 25, everyone's like, wow, that's so young, like you should really enjoy your life, go date around, you don't know, you know. So there's a lot of career and like scared of commitment. This is something that I personally feel for myself, especially when I was younger, when I broke up.
All right, so maybe Janice.
Hi. So I feel that commitment is what can be built when the flames of that romantic love kind of like fades out. So, you know, when you hook up, you get that excitement, the thrill, novelty, someone new, everything is new to you and fresh. And what would keep that going is probably whether you're committed to keeping it at that status or not. whether it's hookup or not. So from my experience, mine developed really closely, and the baseline of it was still very sexual with one of my partner. And we started casually, like no string attached. When you get to be in Singapore, come see me. When I get to be in your country, I come and see you. That is how casual it is. And in between, we would, check in on each other. So I didn't expect anything more. And I think the beauty of it is I didn't expect anything, and then it flourished and developed to something more than I can even handle. Because right now I don't see him for over a year because he's based in Hong Kong. And now we have the travel bubble. It's like my manifestation happened. It's like for me. So yeah, so I feel like romantic love and commitment is very different for many generations. It always changes, and it's like how you teach your children of the future generation. Because I have a young child, and my mom raised me to only lose my virginity to my future husband, and I lost it to a dildo when I was younger. So you see, funny thing, yeah, it's not even a real life person I lost it. I lost it to a dildo. And then I felt a bit guilty about it, that I lost my virginity pretty late, in like 20s. And then now I have a child out of wedlock. Tell you, everything is so different. My mom is in love with the child. She learned to accept that I am polyamorous and have multiple partners. In fact, she met all my partners. So she's in the generation, she's born in the 50s. So she's approaching 70 next year. And she's able to tell me, do what makes you happy. So I say that to all hookup culture too. Do what makes you happy. If hooking up doesn't make you happy, what are you hooking up for? Honestly, if it's a phase, sure. And during that phase, if you feel happy hooking up, it's okay. I'm not gonna slut shame you. Neither should you care about other people slut shaming you. For both male and female, okay, not necessarily only for female. So you can also slut shame men. So yeah, so that's what I feel about romantic love and commitment. It is really. So we have a question from Yenta. Curious to know, Janice, how you define loss of virginity. Wow. Well, it's a good question. I don't know. Penetrative sex could be anything. Could be oral as well. Yeah. So I lost that like years ago. So I would think. I mean, I'm raised like that. Virginity is just having sex with somebody. So that is what I feel loss of virginity would be. It could be anything, but I lost it to a dildo, so that's great. So I'll pass it to Sam, I guess. Sam? No?
Sam.
Oh, sorry. Internet cut off for a while. Yeah. Sorry. What was the question again?
So how do we sort of define romantic love and commitment differently from other generations?
Right. Okay. So I think of it as there is a new, how would I say? Okay, me being a bit of a history buff, so there's something very interesting and different about this civilization. I think that is a fundamental. If I were to use one phrase, is return to the jungle, in a sense where if you look at the past few generations, they've been characterized primarily by family structures. So there is a difference between, let's say, monogamous and polygamous ones. For example, polygamous ones would be more close to Islam and some kind of other societies, and monogamous ones would be kind of like the common standard. For example, both Western and Eastern society practice monogamy mostly. Of course, certain people might have extramarital partners or whatever, but let's not put that into a whole structured environment. So I think that society is opening up now for both better and for worse, because there's always pros and cons about every situation. But I think people should have a very balanced view on that not everything is all, how would I say, all nice and rosy, or not everything is all, how would I say, all down either. I mean, like where was I talking about? Sorry. The difference between traditional society and today's society, right? I think that today's society is fundamentally more individualistic. However, that means also that we have to exercise greater personal responsibility for ourselves. I think that's not sure if you guys heard of this meme word before. It's called cope, COPE. It's a coping mechanism which I'm fundamentally fundamentally against. The difference between hope and cope is that one of them pushes you to be a better person because you're actually using something to aim towards a higher target, whereas the other one is sort of like the tyranny of lower expectations, which I find is fundamentally a dangerous situation to put yourself in. Yeah, so I view all this as a, well, to me, sex is a physiological process. Am I being penalized for it? I think in some ways, yes, because I think people, okay, certain girls do not trust me because of that, because I'm a very physical guy. I approach them, I'm just, I won't say I'm super direct, but the thing is that I'll try to escalate from there. And I think that kind of breaks a bit of trust from there. So if they choose to reject me, that is fine. I have to accept these consequences because this is the path that I choose for myself. So I cannot have this kind of cope, like, you know what? I mean, I cannot portray myself as a kind of guy who wants to be with multiple women and then expect the girl to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to willing to give him a chance for a serious relationship. I think these things are still mostly mutually exclusive. This will be the way it is until the end of time, you know? I think that people have to define the expectations and accept the risk and responsibilities accordingly. We cannot have both of both worlds. Economics is all about you can have anything you want, but you cannot have everything you want. So I would count the certainties rather than the abstract probabilities.
Okay, thanks. And Marissa?
I don't know if I believe that our conception of relationships and commitment has actually fundamentally changed. I think the only thing that's happened is that we've become freer in deciding when we want a particular level of commitment. Like, and I think it's the conversation's opened up a lot more ever since casual sex has become less taboo than it was before. But at least when I discuss it with my friends, we always break it down into almost like two streams. Like there's your chemistry with a certain person and your that type of relationship. And then there's a type of relationship where it's more about your compatibility. And yeah, of course, like you can have both in the single one. But when you're looking for, say, I don't know, longer term commitment, then you're looking for compatibility. It's not just about like the heat, the passion, the fire. It's about how you operate as a team and how you work together as a duo that'll take you, into the future as a long-term partnership versus chemistry, where you do have that heat, that passion, the thing that kind of keeps you excited, the thing that keeps you on your toes. And I think that's that's what you kind of look for if you're in like a hookup mindset or you're like a casual relationship mindset, because you're not looking for your husband or your wife or multiple other partners. You're looking for someone to enjoy yourself with, and whether you make it exclusive or non-exclusive, it doesn't change the fact that it's fundamentally a type of relationship. And yeah, I fully agree with what was being said earlier in terms of you get to try both or try every kind of level of commitment, and then you get to see if someone you start off with compatibility and then it escalates into like building chemistry or vice versa. And I think it's very hard to segment different people into different boxes because relationships are dynamic. Like that's what's beautiful about them. And when it comes to commitment, that is a very individualistic thing that comes down to just those partners and what they want out of that relationship. Commitment isn't just putting a ring on it. It's having some sense of connection and devotion to somebody else, and it doesn't really have to go much farther than that.
Okay, thanks. I think before I ask the next question, I think Fiona has a comment to make. I think you're on mute. You're on mute, Fiona.
Hi, sorry. Yes, someone left a message in the comment chat box saying that my mom told me I gave everything away to my ex, which was my virginity. I am a woman.
Going back to what was being said by Janice and like losing your virginity to a dildo, I mean, I don't think she gave her dildo everything. I think if we're looking at the criteria of virginity and penetrative sex, like by that criteria, all of us lost it to the first time we tried a tampon. I think it's a really outdated point of view. I'm really sorry that, that's sort of something that you had to take on emotionally, but I hope you're able to let it go, because that shouldn't diminish your worth whatsoever. And just to address the question I've just seen in the chat of like, which do I prefer, committed or non-committed? Very much depends on the phase of life I'm in. I'm not traditionally like a casual hookup type of girl. I actually just left a 3-year relationship at the beginning of this year and spent a long time just being by myself, trying to figure my stuff out and figure out what I wanted. Am I looking for a committed relationship at the moment? No. Am I looking to meet new people and see where it takes me? Sure. But you know, it's all a learning process.
All right. So I think just now from all of your answers, I get that we get a lot more freedom to define love, romantic love, and commitment. Yeah, but as in regards to sort of maybe sort of dating and relationships in the Asia culture, a lot of it might be, so correct me if I'm wrong. So a lot of it's tied with like a communal aspect of what your family or society thinks, and so in that regard, to address the gap between the family sort of expectations and how you define commitment and how you define romantic love. How have you guys sort of attempt to sort of address that gap and like overcome that? Yeah, so maybe you could start with sort of Janice.
Overcome what?
Overcome the gap in terms of expectations of your parents or your family, and as well as your own definitions around love.
Okay, yes. So when I was younger, the standard way for a relationship to develop is, you meet someone, you get to know someone, and then you get married, and then you have babies, something like that. So I was raised like that all my life, monogamous, traditional, the right path. Okay, so thanks to the hookup culture, after a very bad breakup, I changed totally. Probably not even polyamorous. I went to sleep with multiple people just to fill the void inside me. And then while doing it, I learned that what I like, what type of man I like, to the point of what color is their eyes that I like, to their accent that I love to hear, and to the kind of like the character and their lifestyle. So I managed to, from the hookup, thanks to the hooking up, I discover my sexuality. Okay, so it's a self-discovery phase for me. As much as everyone sees, she's just messing around and all. And that's where I decided to open and learn more about polyamorous relationships, because I want something more emotionally invested other than just sexual. Because without the emotion, the sex is a bit flat, I would say. And then I evolve and become demisexual. And that's where I open up and tell my parents about it, specifically my mom, who raised me a Catholic girl. Clearly nowhere near that. But that doesn't make me like a sinner or anything like that. So I feel there's definitely a gap in our generation from the past and now, and the way we define and label what Asian values is, and like how we go about with this kind of very free and easy culture. We take it as a self-learning process, about your own sexuality for both men and women. Why not? How would you know if you stay with one person that is all you like? How can you? It's like eating a cuisine, and for the rest of life you only can have Japanese cuisine instead of anything else. That's a bit difficult. It's hard, I feel, but for some people it works. So let's not, invalid them. They are very much valid, whatever reasons they have for the monogamous traditional lifestyle.
Right. So it's mostly through sort of informing and sort of educating yourself better to bridge that,
Yeah.
gap.
And my mom tells me I read too much. That's why I'm following this lifestyle. At first, 5 years ago, when I was like reading a lot about polyamorous and how to navigate that kind of lifestyle, she said I read too much. Like, that's why I'm just following, it's like a fad, a fashion fad, everyone's wearing this, so you're wearing it. No, after 5 years, she saw that I was like happy and genuinely happy with my multiple partners. She just said, do what makes you happy. And that is the best, I think that's the best thing she has ever said to me ever since when she really think that it's not working out for me, polyamory and stuff like that. Okay.
I think Bear has a question in the comments. So how do you get your mom to be comfortable with your polyamory? Was she always okay with it? And how did the conversations with her go about this?
But at first it was very uncomfortable. Like you say, she said I read too much books or articles about people's lifestyle on it. And over the years, she just see me grow and change. I became a better communicator now because I have 4 partners. You have to be a good communicator. If not, it'll just blow out of proportion. Yeah, and back then when I only have 1 partner at a time, I always keep things to myself, and I was afraid that by telling my partner a certain thing that I don't like, that my partner would leave me. So it's my insecurity for me, it's an insecurity. If you tell someone this is how you feel and the person leave, so I just keep quiet. So that's my life, like 20 years of my life is like that. And then the 5 years after that, I just tell my partner anything I feel. I say sometimes I don't even know what I'm feeling, but I'm just telling you so you know how I'm feeling. You know what I mean? Sometimes I can't even figure out, let's figure out together. And then they still stick around. And it's been like 3-4 years now, going to 4 years. It's just so fulfilling for me, I feel, to have multiple partners that meet different needs. So when I am fulfilled, my mom can sense that overall I am like, how to say, more clear on what I want. And this is what I want. 4 men. And my son, of course. So, and the question about how did the conversation go? So eventually she get to meet my partners over the years. Sometimes she don't even know they are my partners. But then she said, yeah, they're very nice. And I said, oh, actually they are this, and this is what it is. The relationship is like that. He's in Hong Kong, he's in the States, this is in Singapore. So she'll be like, okay. And that's why she say, do what makes you happy, which is great, I feel. And I'm going to pass that down to my son. Do what makes you happy, for sure.
Okay, that's nice. Yeah. Right, so maybe you could move to Jasmine. You have to address in terms of the gap between expectations from your family, mom and dad. I think there's one comment that's saying mom and dad, and as well as your definitions around love and commitment.
So what's interesting is that I come from a family that does not practice. We don't really have the traditional sort of family values. I come from generational of divorces in my family. So it goes to my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents as a generational sort of thing. So and so going to the traditional family values, as much as it is there because we're still family and everything like that, but it's not a typical traditional where parents stay together. So it's very few in my family that I see actually my uncles or whatever stay for a long period of time. They are there, but it's just my direct family that's not there. So, and because of that, I feel like I am very, very careful with who I choose to be a life partner. And I haven't found that as of yet as well. And so, because I just don't want to fuck up like all my family members did. And not that so the reason why I feel my theory is the reason why the divorces happen is because they got married too young. It's that's the main thing. Even my parents, my mom, my parents were probably together. My mom was 20, my dad was 22. They got together for 3 months. And because she's the daughter and they could only afford 1 child to go to university, my grandparents had to, my uncle got to go to university. So my mom never got to go to university. And so, the traditional values of okay, so since you can't go to university, you might as well get married. So she got married and then it just didn't work out. So I'm very careful with who I choose. And ever since I was young, I've always been sex positive anyway. The reason how I got into sex positivity, the conversation, was because I always find it very weird how we are surrounded by such a sexualized world. It's so easy to just click on porn. It's so easy to click on, movies and stuff like that. But the conversations around sex is so taboo. I can't even talk to my parents about it. My mom is just get like really, weird about it. I was the one who actually told my sister about, what is safe sex, how to be, what is your body, different parts of your body, because I've just been curious and I did my own research. And so there's that. And it also helps that my sister got married first and got into a long-term relationship. So like all the burden of like bearing grandchildren has been lifted off me. So that's been good. And to sort of answer the question by Bear, has your employer ever discriminated against you or treated you differently due to your side gig as a sex positive advocate? So the beautiful thing is that I work for a company that is run by women. So like my boss is female. So I work for a talent agency. So all our talents are female, just by chance, not because we purposely targeted female. And because of that, we then created retreats and events and workshops for women about empowering women. And and all my talents and my boss herself, they have their own branding, they have their own stuff going on. So when I did my own thing, my boss was just really supportive. Like she's just really supportive to know that, okay, my employee, she's doing her own thing and I support that. So which is really great. Like even my talent support. So to answer that, but that's also because I work with such like non-conventional sort of private company. I don't know how it is if it's a public company. Probably still do, because some government agencies actually ask me to do stuff, but I don't know, it's hard to say, but I've been lucky in that sense.
Then maybe Samuel could address that.
Yeah, okay. I see a lot of questions here, so I'll just sum it up in two different statements. One of them is that how would people see you as a man slut? So second is that kind of like what was that? Okay, what are the differences between a guy who sleeps around and a girl who sleeps around? So I'll address these two separately. Yeah. So first thing of all, how will people see you as a guy who sleeps around? So all I can say is that there are going to be both benefits as well as penalties. I think that okay, here's a very controversial thing. If you believe that biology is a real thing, then I think you can already guess things by instinct. For example, if I look at someone, I mean, like speaking from personal experience, like if I let's say see a girl in a club and I roughly know whether she's DTF tonight, I will approach that one. I don't know how to describe it. I cannot use any science for that, but I don't know. I really cannot know. Let's say I think that maybe some girl can see that in me. I don't know as well. I mean, like I don't see myself in the mirror and think about this, right? So in this regard, I think it's yeah, exactly, it's a come fuck me vibe. Yeah, it's true. I think that sometimes it's just written all over the face. There's no scientific explanation for that. DTF vibes. Okay, this is very interesting. How would I say? I tell my guy friends a joke as a form of analogy. Like for example, have you heard of the gaydar? It's the gay radar. For example, like you will know if your guy friend is gay. I won't say it's accurate 100% of the time, but most guys can figure out 80% of the time. Like, okay, my guy friend is gay, then that's it. But the thing is that I don't know why I have this specific DTF radar. So like it kind of like homes in and seeks like a beacon. Exactly. Yeah. So I think that there's always benefits as well as curses. I mean, let's be honest about it. I don't bullshit. I don't bullshit my partners. I don't bullshit people. I don't want to brag about this. I don't want to hide it under the carpet either. It's kind of like a don't ask, don't tell situation, like, so in a way I kind of live my life as a gay man, because the thing is that how would I say, they are pretty much the same. A lot of them, they pretty much like they don't tell people they're gay unless people ask, so I think I structure my life in similar ways. I don't tell people unless they ask directly, it's just something I don't see the point of doing things. I mean, I know a lot of millionaire friends. They have so much money, but they don't want to brag about it. It's just kind of like, I'm a quiet guy. Maybe you don't see that, but I am a quiet guy. So to address the second, DTF at Din Tai Fung. Oh, that's the favorite thing on Tinder. Like the only DTF I like is Din Tai Fung. So, or the second thing is down to friendship. Like it's hilarious, but never mind. So second thing is about let's say man slut versus woman slut. This is very, very interesting. I think that because okay, the difference is that we are fundamentally different biologically. So let's just say that a healthy weight is I think it's not only how they toxic behavior. Okay, so I think that men and women are fundamentally different biologically. For example, like you can have, for example, men can have multiple girls in one day, inseminate. Oh, hello, your kid's cute. Whereas women are like, okay, you have this one opportunity, you can produce like let's say one child every year, even after weaning and nursing and all that kind of stuff. So it's like an opportunity cost. So in a way, men would. Okay, here's a very interesting thing. I believe that the male spectrum is. Am I going too long about this? You let me know if I'm rambling on too long. So the male spectrum is very divided. For example, like there have been studies that are issued that male testosterone can vary all the way from 300 ng per deciliter, nanograms per deciliter, okay, all the way to really high. So men are, you can have very, how would I say, very, very monogamous men as well as very fuckboy men. So for women, they're kind of like centered around the center. So I think I'm running out of time. I'll just cut off right here.
All right, Marissa?
It's a very technical approach to man slut versus woman slut, coming down to the volume of sperm and gestation period. I think in my life, because I had an English father and Indonesian mother, like Indonesian Singaporean, and the running joke was that if I didn't want to go to school, if I didn't want to study, I better go find myself a husband, sort of thing. And then as I got old, and my mom was also the kind who was like, no boys till after, like no talking about boys till after school, after exams, when you graduate. And then by the time I turned 18, she was like, why don't you have a boyfriend? You were supposed to be doing that the whole time. I didn't actually expect you to listen to me. So it was a little bit of mixed messaging, but I think watching my parents' relationship, it was about the fact that they were compatible, and that was the thing to aspire to. They've been together for 32, almost 33 years now. And so I think that's what's imprinted on me in terms of my values when I'm looking for a relationship, is someone that I'm actually looking to commit to long term. Because I think in that sense, I have a very traditional conception of, you know, one partner for the rest of my life, but then timing comes into play. And like when that, you know, when that partner enters my storyline is more fluid. When it comes to like the casual approach, I was actually quite surprised, because given how conservative my mom was when I was growing up, it was only after my breakup with my last serious partner that she said, you don't actually know anything about, you know, what you like, what you're looking for, because you haven't dated enough people. So she actually ended up being the biggest advocate of me, you know, dating multiple people at once, not necessarily sleeping with multiple at once, but basically getting to know them, understanding what qualities they brought to the table, how they would display affection, and then understanding myself in the process by learning about what would make me feel good or make me feel, you know, self-assured, important, and kind of have a balanced power dynamic in the relationship. To talk about the DTF scenario, I think that's also quite complicated, because I think for women, there are definitely some of us who will enter like this. I definitely have friends who will go out to a club and have this energy that Samuel was talking about, where they're there to find a guy and go home with him, and that's that, and like power to them. I also know that for the vast majority, I would say maybe 70 to 80% are more open-minded when they enter the scenario. Like, for example, if they were to go to a nightclub and be like, if I find someone I think is cool, I would go home with him. But that's not necessarily the outcome that I'm looking for. It's less of a goal for the night out. And then, you know, you'll get people like me who are more conservative, and the idea of going home with a stranger is a little bit daunting and probably not something I'm gonna engage in. So yeah, I think it all depends on what angles you're evaluating it from. But I think it's definitely changing in Asian culture as well as Western.
Right, thanks, Marissa. So I think we have a follow-up question from this. So what I think Luca asked, what is the role of societal pressure in your respective intimate lives, and how do you cope with that, especially in a country like Singapore or Malaysia that pushes heavily towards a certain kind of family. So maybe Marissa could go ahead and address this.
Could you repeat that last bit?
Especially in a country like Singapore or Malaysia that pushes
Yeah.
heavily towards a certain kind of family. So maybe like a nuclear family.
Right.
2 kids.
Okay. I think that pressure still exists, especially when you bring in the element of the female body clock and the fact that Singapore domestic policy is driven to, you know, you're a baby maker and your time is running out and you got to have kids like now, especially if, you know, you're in your prime in your early 20s. And I mean, like Jasmine was saying, if you're in your early 20s, you may not know enough yet to like know you want what partner you want to settle down with and get, you know, and get forever involved with, and then to add kids to the mix can also be tricky. I think we are hopefully, at least for me, it's this way, reaching a point where we can look at societal pressure, at least from like the government standpoint, and be like, that's not your business. This is my life, my body, my choice. More of approach, but I think it's difficult because I think other people get affected by this sort of thing more than others. And, you know, I mean, I'm lucky that I'm quite immune to it, I think.
What are sort of tips to in terms of building up the immunity towards a societal?
Frankly, exposure and conversation, things like this, where you're having conversations with people with different outlooks, different lifestyles, you know, polyamory, serial dating culture, serial hookup culture. I think those are all sorts of the conversations you should be having to know that you have other options out there than the narrative that's sort of jammed down your throat from school onwards. Like in starting our podcast, that was the thing that we learned the most, was because by creating this non-judgmental atmosphere for people to open up and share their stories, you hear about way more stuff. Like we have a guest coming on next week and she organizes international play parties. And that's not a realm I ever considered, you know, looking into or being curious about, but just listening to her story, understanding how she got involved, why she thinks it's important and why she feels it has a place in society, just opens you up to that idea. And like, I don't know if I'd ever attend one. I'm never going to say never, but it's just a fascinating way to look at other lifestyles and start to compare your own and decide, is that something I could experience for myself?
All right, thanks, Marissa. And maybe Jasmine could address the role of societal pressure in your intimate life, and especially in Singapore and Malaysia, where a certain family is posited.
Yeah, I get it's yeah. I think when I think of societal pressure, it's more towards the biology, like the clock, that Marissa was saying. You know, like this pressure, but also like I don't know, man. Like lately, I've been feeling very broody. I've been seeing kids, and I'm just like, I want children, but I also think of like the reality of like I cannot afford children. So like whenever someone has this conversation, like, don't you want kids? Don't you, or, you know, and everything like that. Your sister already has kids, now you're third. I'm just kind of like, I want it and I see it and I would love to have a kid, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, the reality of it is that like it's so expensive for children and I don't want to force myself to do something just because society tells me to do it. Like I see a lot of my friends who have kids, and I think they were like ready, but also they were not ready, some of them, but it's just because like, so like in Malaysia, the culture that I grew up in, especially, so I'm an indigenous person in Malaysia, and in indigenous culture, it's always like you cannot too long with your partner. Very long, not good. You have to like as soon as you can, just lock that in, get married. Whether you want kids or not, that's not important, but you cannot too long. And I just find that it's very detrimental to a lot of people because it's expensive. And I see my cousins going through that right now. Like she had to get engaged with her partner and eventually get married, but she like really doesn't want to, but because culturally this is what it is expected of us if you are in a long-term relationship. I don't know if that answers the question, but for me, I'm just like, you know, I'm just not ready. I don't think that answers the question, but it's a good conversation nonetheless.
Right. So maybe I could move on to Janice. I think there's a comment in the chat box that we can just talk about it, Janice. So how do you identify and call out toxic behaviors in polyamorous relationships? So maybe Janice could share over the cam and audio.
Usually when I meet people and I tell them that I'm polyamorous, I tell them who I am, and some are open with it, open to the idea, or just figuring out, and they would have some expectation in the beginning of a relationship. So all you have to do is just listen, like really clearly at what they're saying. So sometimes I meet people who tell me like, I don't do drama. I mean, like, so what does that mean? You don't do drama? When you have one partner, you already have some drama. Two will be more. Three will be, it just goes, the scale just goes on the more partner you have. So you just have to learn how to, live in harmony with everyone. But so when they tell me that, I feel like it means they're saying that they cause a lot of drama and very regularly. That's why they say I don't do drama. So really you need to listen, and then it also could mean that they do hurtful things and they will complain. So I won't want to get involved with someone who tell me that I don't do drama. I'll be very wary when they say that. And instead, sometimes, and then the way I reply would be like, if you don't do drama, then why do you want multiple romantic relationship? Why are you even wanting to try to open to that when you don't do drama? So, and there's some that also say stuff like, I'm not a fan of neediness. I get that a lot. I'm like, do I come across needy? Are you telling me I come across needy? Okay, never mind that. But that makes me feel like you meant that the only person who gets to have needs in this relationship is you, when you say that you're not a fan of neediness. So I cannot, have needs, but you can. And that's very selfish. So this is some, I would say, toxic behavior in relationship, like words and what they say really mean a lot. So I have managed to hone that listening skill when I talk to people. Like maybe the first few years when I'm into this lifestyle, I don't know what's going on. And then I plunge into a relationship with them and it's all like havoc and just madness, which I don't like as well. And then I learn how to manage and understand what are they trying to tell me. And I really, really listen. That's where I say I become a better communicator and probably a listener too while communicating. So I'm like, so when you say you're not a fan of neediness, so do you take care of all your wants and needs by yourself and not rely on anyone else for support, emotional support? Is that what you're trying? Is that what you mean? So, and sometimes they want to be first, in polyamorous relationship or ethical non-monogamy, there's like sometimes a hierarchy. So they want their wants and needs put first as compared to another person that I am seeing. But because I don't work that way, everyone is equally important to me. And based on what situation they are in, that I would dedicate more time when, maybe one partner, a family member passed away. So I would dedicate more emotional support to that partner because it's more urgent than someone I'm going out to watch movie, right? So that's how you weigh. So when someone tells me, you have to put me first and my needs first, I cannot. I cannot, because it's really situational based. I cannot really put anyone first when I have a son because he comes first. Ultimately, he is my main commitment, probably my anchor. So I have a question from someone other than this toxic behavior is, how do I navigate? I wrote it down. It's lost somewhere. From Bear, how do you navigate the relationship of your son with partners? So it's not easy to allow my people I see to meet my son because I don't know like how it would affect my son. But as long as I feel safe emotionally with this partner, safe is the word, safe, then there's a chance that they get to see my boy. Because if I feel safe enough for my son to meet my partner. Okay, like emotionally safe. Doesn't matter if they're gonna be in my life for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or forever. Doesn't matter. 1 month, I still feel safe, and then after that, the relationship didn't last. it's fine. It's learning for me. And for my son, they are all uncles to him. He has so many manly figure to look up to because they love him so much, like probably more than me and more patient than I am to my own son, you know. So yes, so that is how I navigate the relationship based on how safe I feel emotionally. And then they get to see my son. In fact, I travel with my partners, with my son. So it's like people would think we are family. And my partners are Caucasian, they are white, and my son look very white as well. And they look more related to my son than I am to my own son. So they were like, they would think that he's the father. And I'm like, okay, the mother, but the son don't look like me at all. My son don't look like me at all, not very much. And so yeah, we travel together, and you know, when you travel with someone, you learn a lot more because you're confined together. Your itinerary must be on the same page. And that tells a lot about the relation, whether it can go longer than what it is. Maybe after the travel is over because we cannot tolerate each other for 3 days. So, but no, I've went on a few travels with my partner and my son before, and it's very lovely. Like my son don't ask me like, who are they? Or neither does he get jealous when he sees me hugging them, holding them. In fact, my son join us for a hug when he see me hugging my partners. And that is what I want him to learn, that love is limitless, you know. Doesn't mean I hug one person, you get lesser love. No, you can join us. So yeah, so that's why I have many partners, because I have so many love to give.
Wanted to add on to what Jenny said in the earlier part about like listening to what the person says, because I used to sort of, one of my fuck buddies was this guy, and then one of the first thing he said was, all the women I date are crazy. And I was just like, oh. And he's like, yeah, like I don't understand why they're crazy, until he gaslighted me. And there's an occasion where he gaslit me, and then I was just like literally thinking to myself, like, I'm pretty sure that's not what I said. Like, and then I thought I was crazy, and then only I was like, oh, so that's why all the women he said like are crazy, not because they're crazy. He's crazy for gaslighting everybody. And then I was just like, holy shit. And I just stopped seeing him anymore. And after that, I was like, nope, done.
I think a lot of women, I think gaslighting has been one of the strongest terms for women to add to their vocabulary, because it's finally acknowledging that. I completely agree with you. Because I have a lot of guy friends, and the number of times they'll say, I dated this girl, or I hooked up with this girl, and then she just turned crazy. And then the moment you just start to poke with a few questions, you're just like, oh, no, you led her on and you drove her insane. Like, completely agree.
Yeah, listening is really, really important, especially when having multiple partners, really. One partner, two partner, whatever number of partner. For everybody, male, female, like listen to what they have to say. You're right, like Jasmine say, the guy always say, everyone I see is crazy. Something more to than just that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, women are definitely capable of gaslighting as well. I've witnessed that in action as well. So it's not to put too much of a gender on it, but I think the narrative of the psycho X typically falls on a woman more than the guy. And so I think it is something that I think women, it riles us up more because we know it so well as an experience.
I think it's a matter of selection bias. Like, for example, you have a lot of situations where, okay, there's always this phrase floating around that all men are assholes who don't like commitment. But then here's the very interesting thing, right? Do the men who like commitment get selected? I mean, that's for a particular type of girl. Let's say that if she does certain things, then she's like certain men. Then after she has certain experiences. So this works both ways. For example, like guys who experience a lot of crazy girls. How come they're experiencing crazy girls? That's because they select crazy. Simple as that. Same thing like a gaslighting from the other way is the same thing as well. So I begin to realize that, I mean, we have to take personal responsibility for our own actions. I mean, I think that whether it's polyamorous relationships or whether it's hookups, I think because we're dealing with so many more people, therefore we have to have a very specific set of toolkits we cannot treat every single problem like a hammer and just hammer away a screw. We have to have a different tool for every situation, but we must manage the situation well. It's all about people skills, you know. We have to, yeah, I think it's going to be very tricky.
Right, thanks. I think maybe at this point, let me sort of pass the time over to Fiona. If she has just a comment to make.
Yeah, the comment box, the chat box has been going crazy regarding your topics and what you've talked about. I just want to, okay, let me find, okay, there's one who mentioned earlier about parents and generations. The person said, I think a lot of us females with older, usually boomers, parents, our worth was defined overly or covertly as the sex virginity we gave to a guy. Mine treated it as a type of bargaining chip, sadly. And then you guys were talking about our moms, and we were saying that someone said, interesting that we talk about moms and not about our dads. So yeah. Then someone replied saying that I assume all dads just wanted their daughters to be virgins until the wedding vows. I didn't check though, it was too awkward. So,
I can actually make one comment about, because my dad's he's my rock, he's my best friend, but growing up he'd be like, so like, you know, you dating, kiddo, you seeing any of these guys? And at this point in high school I said no, and his only comment to me was, you know, do what makes you happy, but and I remember this to this day, he said, I think you intimidate a lot of men, and I think that that's why they won't ask you out. And it became more of like a power dynamic thing, I guess, and feeling like, oh, if I'm intimidating someone, that's probably why I'm not being asked out. Maybe I should kind of be quieter, sweeter, sort of thing. And I don't think that's what he meant, or at least if it was what he meant, he's changed his attitude now. But it was the idea that like, I know I can be a bit of a ball buster, and I take ownership of that, and I quite like that about myself. But in terms of how it affected my relationships, it sort of forced me to think, if I'm looking for someone, my ideal partner is someone who can see someone who's strong and who's not going to take bullshit and then level up to it, rather than think, I'm not going to mess around with that, or she's crazy, or she's just a man eater. And then, you know, I'd end up settling for a relationship that does not work for me.
Yeah, I kind of echo that as well, because, you know, growing up as a plus size woman, I always thought that like visually I do not look interesting or attractive, therefore I have to work more with my personality. And by working on my personality and just doing a lot of sort of like leadership role, like doing a lot of things, it just became like a very strong personality and very confident in that sense. And that to a lot of people, I suppose, are very intimidating. But then I'm just like, but you know, this is the kind of thing that I have to do for myself, because a lot of people just don't find me interesting just by my looks, because I'm not your stereotypical whatever beautiful. And so yeah, I'm just like, if anyone's gonna find that intimidating of a strong, confident person, then okay, I guess I need to like go and find someone who does not think that way, because I'm not going to be, you know, because society has already looked at plus size women as being like needy, kind of desperate for love, or blah, 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 like that, and unattractive, unsexy. And I'm just like, I'm against all of that. And I need to create my own narrative in that sense.
I actually think back to when I was in my early 20s and the book The Game came out by Neil Strauss, and it was all about pickup artists and how to successfully convince women on a night out to come home and sleep with you. And I remembered a few guy friends praising that book as like the, you know, the player's Bible, how you can guarantee to get sex, sort of thing. And I remembered, I think I read 2 or 3 chapters, and the crux of it was prey on insecure women, basically feast on their insecurity. That was through negging. I've just seen a comment about the truth where he admits that everything he's done is wrong, but I'm so skeptical about this guy that I'm but then the fact that it basically bred an entire industry, all these seminars that were built around identifying and honing in on women's insecurities or the other person's insecurities. I don't really want to put a gender on it, and using that as social leverage to then convince you that to convince them that if this person was going to even give you the time of day, then that could mean that, oh, I have validation, I'm going to go home and sleep with them. And I think, Jasmine, what you were saying about basically focusing on a weakness and that being your gateway to attraction is deeply flawed.
I think Samuel has a comment to make.
Yeah, so just want to elaborate, okay, for me, how I started my journey was actually pretty much self-taught. I read a few articles. I've never really read Neil Strauss before, but I know some people who have read Neil Strauss. There are some. Okay, I'm part of a WhatsApp group, it's a confidential one. So they have a lot of pickup artists. They are both so-called professionals, meaning that they've been there, done that for many years, as well as total amateurs. Where am I? I say somewhere in the middle, right? So to put it this way, there is a serious problem in the scene. There are two problems in the pickup artist scene. One of them is that they believe that techniques are a substitute for mindset, which I strongly disagree with. Number two is that they depend too much on validation, in a sense where they do not have a stable masculine core. So what happens is that they always rely on tactics. So what happens is that they start a situation by preying on the girl's insecurities, and then after that, yes, they get the girl, they get multiple girls. But the problem is that eventually she will see through that insecurity because he's just putting up a facade. He's just using the techniques. He's just using the nagging approach. He's using a state where, you know what, he has to push someone down to become better than them. So I begin to realize that 90% of pickup artist coaches and male dating coaches out there, they are just teaching the techniques. They're not teaching the mindset. Exactly what to do versus who they are. Exactly, they're kind of like how would I say? Okay, they're kind of like doctors who prescribe you medicine, but they don't truly understand how the medicine works. They don't truly understand how the physiological processes work. So in that regard, I say about the 10% of dating coaches out there and pickup artists out there who teach mindset, I think that's super important. If a guy wants to do this, he needs to have a psychology of his own. He needs to have his convictions. He needs to have his principles. That's why I'm so big on mindset.
I don't disagree with you. I think basically having a stronger core and a stronger, sense of identity and mindset is critical for both sides of the equation. I think the going with teaching, methodology and using it as your like how you're going to get the girl or get the guy, that person's going to internalize it because they're not seeing it as methodology. They're having their insecurities highlighted, undermined, and then picked back up again, and then finding themselves in a situation where they're trying to fight for their worth. And I think the danger of internalizing those attitudes falls on both sides of the equation. And I think the other person, the person that's being pursued, is the one that is the collateral damage. They're the one that has to bear the brunt of how toxic that behavior can be.
All right, okay, as a thanks. So I think just now we speak about gaslighting, nagging, and how to sort of, we're picking up as well. So I guess we can move on to the next topic about sort of setting boundaries and managing emotional loss. So it's often a skill that needs to be learned. So how has the learning process of setting emotional boundaries for yourself and for your partner been like for each of you? So maybe we could start off with Janice in terms of the learning process for you.
Hi, yeah. Boundaries are so important in the polyamorous relationship. You have to be very clear. Your boundaries is not like a cage to put, not rules you put on your partner. Does it make sense? So most of the time, a lot of people would think that boundaries is something that you and your partner cannot do, shouldn't do, will not do. It's actually no, it's your boundaries and your consent, what's allowed and what you can take emotionally and accept. So I have learned, because in the beginning stage, I put a lot of like rules in the relationship, and I thought was boundaries, but it was actually rules that you cannot do this, cannot do that. We cannot do this. So I include myself. So in this agreement that I set with my partners, and I realized it's just stifling my partner, and they don't like it. And then I change it up. And I learned that it's more of saying what I am not comfortable with and what they can provide to the table, to the relationship, which is the thing. Yeah. So, and then we have like more partners involved where sometimes they get jealous of the other, it happens, and they are very aware that each of them exists. And sometimes I think they also talk about me. They try to reach out the other partner to talk about me because I am giving like problems and issues, and they'll be like discussing, can you like, I'm so far away from her and this is happening, can you like talk to her since you're in Singapore with her? So it happens. So I cannot tolerate that. That is like, oh, way off my life. You cannot speak with my partner without me knowing. That was one of my very clear boundaries that I spoke to my partner that was trying to help, you see. So he think it was harmless and being helpful. But I don't see it that way, because that's like drawing my line there. Cannot bother my other partners with our problems. You can talk to my friends maybe, but they're not my other partners. So that is what I learned about boundaries. Is so important to make it clear. Okay, you don't by default, this should be it. Because in polyamory, it's like there's no by default. All my boundaries and consent is a little bit different with different partners to begin with. So sometimes I have to write it down in a book and what they can accept and cannot accept as well. So there's like a few of them, and so have to keep track of stuff, and it's not easy. Like managing a little company where you have different employees and stuff like that. But yeah, so I would say that's the learning process for me over the years. It's not easy to get it right, I feel. And it's okay. I'm still learning. I'm not saying I'm like a guru in this lifestyle. Not at all. I think I'm scratching the surface only, even though I've been practicing it for 5 years. But there's no perfect relationship, I feel. So it's about just making it work for the individual partners that I'm seeing. And if it doesn't work, we're not on the same page, and that's probably better to stop the relationship. So I have that too, like years of hard work, and then suddenly, boom, they want to close the relationship. Okay, and I feel it's very selfish because it's probably your insecurity about this lifestyle that you are wanting to cage and lock it in and stuff like that, like just change it to traditional and monogamy. I'm like, you must be going through something. How about you do some self-work first and then speak to me again after a few months? Maybe it would be better. You will see a clearer picture instead of just suddenly shutting it all down. It's so selfish to want me to stop seeing other 3 people that I've invested emotionally for one person who just say, no, you cannot see everybody else. It's out of the line, I feel. So yeah.
All right. Thanks, Janice. So before I hand the time over to Samuel, maybe let me address some of the things over the chat. I think Sam mentioned that accept women but never internalize their validation of you. And then a man should stand on his own feet. So it doesn't matter if he has sort of 10 girls or 0. So yeah, so Samuel, maybe you can share more about the comments and as well as the learning process of setting emotional boundaries as well.
Yeah, I think that this is something that is never addressed anywhere. I mean, never addressed anywhere in modern, let's say, sexual literature or something. Like if you find the polyamorous people, they won't talk about this. You find the PUAs, they'll never talk about this. I happen to know a few PUAs who got their life ruined because they are very good at picking up the girl. They are no good at managing. I mean, they are okay at managing the girl. The problem is that they are no good at managing their own emotions. They cannot imagine their expectations. Let's say they get a 9 out of 10 girl, they're with them for a few years, and after that girl decides, you know what, I'm sick of it nonsense, I want to break up. Oh my goodness, then they're a whole mess on their own, right? And I begin to realize something, right? That for me, myself, I think I'm very much a late bloomer. I lost my virginity very late. So I had a lot of girls within 1 year, then the next year, and so on and so forth. But I begin to realize something. I think that's where the real self-reflection has to come in. Very few people will talk to you about this.
What?
Okay. let me see. Okay. Okay. So I think that this boils down to a certain aspect of philosophy that's not really talked about today. For example, if you delve into Buddhism and Stoicism and all this kind of old school thinking, there is really some wisdom in that, in the sense where, one should be. It is not wrong to pursue passion, but the thing is that it is wrong to be so overwhelmed with passion that it dictates your state of being, that without it you cannot survive. I think that is fundamentally harmful for oneself if you want to manage anything long term. I mean, we must grow as people. I think that all these, for me as a person, I cannot say for other guys. For me as a person, it's a physiological thing. But fundamentally, my focus is on myself as a person. We must manage our expectations and we must manage our self growth accordingly. Otherwise, we'll just be hurt by the whole process. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you have 10 girls or 0 girls, because you yourself must be the person you want to be. Their validation is only temporary. You are eternal.
And for Marissa, the learning process.
Boundaries is something I'm very much in the process of learning. Coming out of my last serious relationship, the breakup process was very painful because I wasn't able to put up boundaries to protect myself and basically ensure my own mental and emotional recovery. I ended up focusing on theirs, trying to almost hold their hand through the breakup. So when it comes to partners, I'm only just trying to figure that out now. In terms of the casual situation, again, very new to this world, so I don't really know what boundaries I have, or I haven't really come up to them yet, other than basically setting them for myself and understanding, like, how far I'm willing to take something with someone, or, am I willing to sleep with them on the second, third, fourth, fifth date or whatever, or I don't plan on sleeping with them at all. That's very much like a learning process right now.
Thanks, Marissa. And then Jasmine?
So when I was younger, so when I was exploring casually dating and stuff like that, I think I was like probably in 25, 26. 25 until 27 was when I was casually dating. And it was quite tough for me to sort of have boundaries because I only had one partner previously, and it was a long-term partner. And I was also very young, so it was just very, very tough for me. And also it was casual, so then it was just really confusing for me. How do I actually set boundaries with someone who's casual? Because setting boundaries mean that like, oh, it's so serious, it's so scary, or whatever like that. So then I just was shit at setting boundaries casually. But then it became easier when partners who are more long term, like even though they're like friends with benefit or whatever, but because I see them over and over again, so it was then easier to have boundaries in that sense. But it's not super firm as well. I've only really started learning about boundaries in my current relationship right now, after doing a lot of sort of self-healing and self-work for the past 2 years. I've been going to retreats and sort of understanding and how do I really express myself. So that has been really good. The main important thing is that, and also like my work helps as well, because I'm a talent agent, I'm a talent manager. It's all about building boundaries with clients, with my talents, and sort of covering my ass essentially with clients. I need to set boundaries with clients so that they cannot shoot me back when I mess up or whatever like that. So with work it was easy, and then relatively going into sort of my personal relationship, I guess, long story short, with casual stuff it was tough for me, but it was also a time where I was young, so I'm not too sure right now how it will be. So if I'm like openly dating again, then it would be interesting to see how that is.
Okay. All right. I think Fiona has a follow-up question as to, what is the difference between boundaries and consent? So maybe Jasmine could sort of address that quickly within 10 seconds. Yeah.
Boundaries is kind of like saying consent is more like what you are comfortable to do, I suppose. Like do you want to do this? Can I go further? Is this I'm like trying to think, my brain. Consent is about giving permission. Boundaries is about, but I feel like consent is part of boundary making. So if you put a boundary saying, I will only do this particular thing, this is what I'm comfortable in, I give you my consent to do this sort of thing, then that's consent. And if you were to get out of that boundary, then that's not giving consent. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I feel like consent is part of boundary making. I mean, they're like kind of intertwined. Just our consent is giving the permission. Boundary is I will work within this box.
Yeah, I think it's setting the parameters versus giving permission. Yeah.
All right, we have 10 minutes left, so maybe we could do a bit of wrap up as to what are your respective hopes for your future regarding romantic love, family life, and parenting. So maybe you could start with Marissa.
My hopes with the future of romantic love, family life, and parenting. I think there's a lot of empowerment that comes with open conversation. I hope that basically these topics become less and less taboo, so that, when a child has a question that they want to ask their parent about, whether it's down to sexual orientation, or they want to try polyamory or anything, it's just something that they can address without shame or fear of judgment. And also that people stop feeling like they're on a timeline, and trying to work according to, certain milestones, like, you're supposed to lose your virginity before your 20s, you're supposed to be married by your 25, like all these things. I want to be able to see a future where we've disabled those and we've kind of deconstructed those a little bit further.
And for Jasmine, in terms of your platform and other stuff.
The future of love and family life and parenting. I feel like, on a personal level, I personally feel like I feel like we need to be more forgiving of ourselves, and what that we've been, there's always this like, but like, I'm pressured to do this, I'm pressured to do that, I want to be this, but also I know that this is kind of not me. That's where I'm at right now, because I'm like, I need to traditionally, but also like, yeah. So instead of going in constant war, it's sort of like, instead of going in constant war, it's me trying to tell myself, like, it's okay if you're feeling pressure, it's okay if you're feeling all this constant war, because everything is part of unlearning. You're unlearning cultures and values and whatever you've been brought up with, and sort of gelling in with what you've learned right now. So being really forgiving of yourself, healing in that sense, and then slowly then sort of creating your own sort of journey for yourself. So like, even though I'm like in my 30s, I'm not married, it's my younger sister who have a child first, I'm instead of being like, oh my god, like she's having a child first, I should be the first one. Instead, I'm kind of like, okay, cool, yeah, like, everyone's on a journey, this is my journey, and that's okay, we will take turn time.
Okay, thanks. And Samuel?
Actually, I have nothing much else to add. Like, I mean, I can go on a 5-hour ramble, but I'm sure you wouldn't want that. I mean, do you have any specific questions?
The specific question is, what are your hopes for, I think, your relationships and parenting or family life moving forward?
Okay, think about it this way. I think, with regards to, let's say, casual versus commitment, I think most guys are somewhere towards the commitment side. Let's just say the majority, the bulk, right? However, the thing is that they won't turn down an opportunity for casual sex. In this regard, I think that very few people are truly, absolutely, I just want commitment only, or I just want casual sex only. So even myself, let's say I may want commitment, but the thing is that she has to be exceptional. What I mean by exceptional is that no, she does not need to be a supermodel. She does not need to have whatever, all these kind of things. But I'm looking for someone with a good heart. I mean, I'm dead serious about it. But that is on a conditional basis. We speak the same language and all these kind of things. So for now, it's just a physiological process. Am I going to be disadvantaged by what I'm doing now? I think yes, but I have to pay the price. I have to pay the penalty for doing so. It is possible. It is entirely possible that a girl who is looking for commitment may not trust me because of my background. But it's fine. If she don't trust me, then I have nothing else to say. So I think it is like demand and supply. The world is a marketplace. We can have anything we want, but we do not necessarily have everything. So we have to be fully conscious of this, and we may have to pay the price later on.
All right, thanks, Samuel. And finally, Janice.
Yeah, like my hopes for society as a whole. Just hope the society will be more accepting and open to unconventional love style and lifestyle. Yeah, and more accepting. In any way, you know, like from the LGBTQ, there's also polyamorous in that, and BDSM, everything, all the ethical non-monogamy. And for my family members and friends, those that understand are still my friends. So I'm not like hoping to get any like validation and try to convert anybody. In fact, all my friends are like monogamous, ironic enough. And they were very open and accepting that I am very different from them, that I have several partners. In fact, these friends met my partners before too, and they are monogamous as well, traditional, but we respect each other's way of life and love style. That is all I think society should be like. Just respect that somebody is bi, sure, gay, lesbian. Yeah, and you know, for the future generation, like my kids, I have been reading to him books about LGBT, about non-binary, words like that introduced to him, and he's turning 4. He's like a bit not sure what it means, but it doesn't matter. I'm just planting seeds for him to be accepting in the future. He know that this exists, these people exist for centuries. It's not new. So that's why and all those books I can't even find in Singapore, which is very upsetting, to be honest. So I just hope, you know, Singapore will be more open in that aspect.
Okay, so thank you, Janice, for a very inspiring comment. So, so maybe let me sort of sum up the comments in the chat box before we end the panel discussion. So I think Bear mentioned that boundaries also apply to other things, to things other than consent, so such as communication. And then I think Mata did mention that, yes, values are boundaries itself. So I guess, you know, if there are there sort of other further comments that the other panelists would like to make, or anyone else? So if there isn't, then we'll sort of end this panel discussion. So you guys can follow up with the other speakers respectively. I think they might send over their handles, and you could sort of follow Marissa's podcast, just so we are clear. Yeah. So anyone who's interested to sort of follow up, to add your handle in the chat box, feel free to do that. Yeah. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, take care.